Matt, I don't know if you know this, but what does making it actually mean? What is our goal? Is it college? Is it a pro contract, a scholarship? Is it a healthier kid, a kid who loves to play soccer at 18? Do you and your kid have the same answer? And did you ever actually ask him?
If you don't define the goal, the system will define it for you. The badge starts to feel like the goal. The next team feels like the goal. The first contract feels like the goal. But what if signing the first pro contract is not making it? What if it is just the next phase?
Yeah, this is where the conversation with Dr. Chris Platts gets important. It's unique for us. Dr. Platts followed hundreds of young players over more than a decade. And what he found is that most families are making big decisions without clear answers to simple questions.
What making it really means. Why 18 to 23 can be such a defining window. Why a bigger badge is not always a better environment. Why late developers often get missed. And why parents have to understand the environment their child is in.
This is Chasing the Game Youth Soccer in America, PhD. Dr. Chris Platt, welcome to Chasing the Game. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, I'm now working as a career coach in professional football. My path into it is I undertook a PhD, and that had 303 players. I then took those 303 players and I followed them for the next 12 years, which gave me a really big independent piece of research into career trajectories. Over the course of doing that, I found that I could do three things. We could begin to predict the future via patterns in the data. If we pass that on to young players and their families, then we can help them plan for that future. And the third thing is, by doing that, we start to allow young players, parents to take ownership of their career. And it really frustrated me that for many other professions, we have career guidance, but for young footballers, we don't really have that. And all of a sudden, I was sat on a mountain of data that could be that. So the overall end game is to get this data into as many hands as I possibly can, so that I can help those young players through their families to thrive through football.
Was it a standard age where you started following the players?
They were between 16 and 18. The very first question was, how many got a professional contract? So we had to zero the data, basically, to give us a starting line. And then from that point, trace them after year one. Where are they? After year two, where are they? After year three.
When does something like this turn from academic to practical?
Let's start with why. That's the first question. Over the course of the PhD, it changed to a lifelong mission, something that meant something to me. I sat in focus groups with those young players, 303 of them, and they opened up in a way that I never, ever thought that they were going to do. There were three to 4 months of data collection, and the stories, the way that they spoke to me about how they were treated, the certain instances that had occurred to them, their hopes, their dreams, their honesty. I came out in many of the interviews in a little bit of sort of shock. Over the course of that period turned into, this can be my career. And from that point, I think I started to have a dream, which was, I can tell these young players and their families so much useful information that helps them to navigate these choppy waters. And you know what? There's hardly anybody out there being honest and transparent with them. And I don't have to preach to them. The way I now do this as a business is I simply help them piece together the data that I have so they make sense of it themselves. A little bit like if I threw Lego pieces on the top of this desk and said, what do you think that is? I don't know, but bit by bit, once if I, start putting it together, turn the pages of the manual, and after a bit you start to go, oh, okay, it's a boat. I see how this is coming together. And that is the trick for young players and their families, to give them the time and the space to begin to conceptualize and understand this themselves.
What's the age range of the players that you're working with now? Are they all at professional academies? Are they all at Prem academies?
From 13 to 20. One, for example, was in an academy, walked away because of how it was and came to me. One is a goalkeeper who's probably about to be released at the end of this season. My work sits best in the space of 14 as they start to prepare for when things get really serious, up to essentially coaching them through the first 5 years of a professional contract. because getting a professional contract at the age of 18 doesn't mean you get a career. It means you've got a first contract. And what we really need to make sure that we do in that space is convert that into a career that's going to last 10 years, 12 years, not something where you think, brilliant, I've got a pro contract at 18.
How do you define, as you're working with young players, what is making it? What is that actually? What's a success?
It's not for me to decide what success is. What does making it look like? We throw out phrases, making it, or I'd love to be a pro. But
Exactly.
I've met professional players who have played 6 seasons at League Two, so say the 4th division in the UK, and will say things like, "I never really made it," which is their own internal perception of how good they could have been and where they ended up. And I've met people who had 1 season in League Two and go, "But I made it. I had my little bit of my dream." And so, again, using the data, what are you trying to achieve? There are some lads who I've spoken to and they go, if I can pay my bills doing this, or if I can go around the world and play football, that I'm good with that, because where you go in your career is key depending on where you're trying to get to. And I say this all the time of, we wouldn't just sit in a car and start driving. We would think, well, where's the end point? Oh, we're going there. Right. So the end of my road, I need to go left. And that is essentially what we can do with this data to have a more transparent conversation about what you need to do. It is absolutely about trying to get a player to think, yeah, what am I trying to do?
Chris, I know you're a super fan of the pod, and there are some similarities to what you're talking about around transparency, and actually why we started this as 2 dads who have been trying to navigate the youth system in the U.S. And while it's incredibly different, there are probably more similarities than people believe that there are, and we've heard that from some of the inbounds that we get. And we do now have 4 professional for 4 professional levels at the men's in the men's game in this country, which means there are true pathways for kids to become a pro, and those look very different because we also have college as a big part of it here in the US. So while it's this incredible thing that there's more pathways for kids to be able to pursue their dreams, it's also created even less transparency in a lot of ways and a lot more decision points for players and parents to understand, quote unquote, like, what does "I made it" or "I will make it" or "I will be a pro" mean, which I think is why we wanted to have you on, because so much of this is actually very relevant for the kids who are pursuing it at that level and the families that are pursuing it at that level. And it's not easy. And there's a ton of questions and there is not a lot of clarity. And I think we're all trying to surface as much as we can, and experts like you who can bring some of that to the table to be part of that conversation.
So my first bit of advice for those parents would be to start with why. Why are we doing this? And a good little task that I will do with young players and their families: ask your son or daughter, why are you playing football? And what is it you are trying to achieve?
Making your dad proud.
But that could be it.
Uh,
That could be
oh,
it. You know, they might turn around and say that. And then the task is, let them go and write that down, and you write it down for yourself. Why am I doing this? And what am I trying to achieve through this journey into football? And it's amazing how many times the answers aren't the same. Most parents will put down things like, I want them to have a purpose. I want them to get satisfaction. It's the same things that we would say about any career, to give them some belief in themselves, to build confidence. Right. Well, if we're in it for this and you're in an academy that is battering your son or daughter, ruining their confidence, they are having to play injured and they're not happy, well, there's your answer. Get out. There are other routes into this that don't have to fulfill that. And I have come across so many parents who have said, you know, we look back at pictures of him now when he was in that academy and it just wasn't even him. It was a fake smile. I've met a parent, he talked about how awfully this coach treated his kid and the mental health impacts that it had on his child. But he kind of they stuck with it because they were like, but this is a coach who's played, he's played at the professional level. So these whys, what are we doing this for? Why are we doing this? They provide the blueprint for you as a family, for you as the humans in this process. And you have to protect yourself because the clubs, they're using your son or daughter as an asset, not because not because they think that they're going to turn them into wonderful human beings. They either want to make money off the game. That's it. So you have to be the anchor. You have to be the foundations upon which you make decisions. And if that means walking away from a certain space because this isn't good for your child, then you have to be in a space to be able to do that. And having the foundations in place is key to that.
This is fascinating. I don't want to generalize, but in America, there's this concept of you work hard, you're going to get somewhere. When you're looking at these data sets, do you separate this idea of how much of it is hard work, how much of it is talent?
Just to tag on to that, I'd love to hear some of the trends that you take from the data that you're also sharing and that's relevant for kids across the groups you're working with.
So 2 parts to the data. There's the experiences of the young players. You're going to be bottom of a hierarchy, and there are ways you are going to be treated that you have to be ready for, and you have to be able to thrive in those situations. Then there are the data that are the quantitative data, the trends over time. And those things include, so for example, one that surprises many people, if you are in a football academy at the Premier League level, there's an 81% chance that you're going to get a professional contract at 18 somewhere. And people will go, I thought it was 1% make it. That's because making it isn't getting a contract at 18. Premier League clubs will stack their under 21s with players who they know, and the amount of clubs that I speak to behind the scenes, they will tell me the same thing. We have an under 21s program. We have to play those games, but the players that are in the under 21s are probably not good enough for our first team, because at the age of 19 or 20, if you were good enough for our first team, you'd be in it. But they have to fulfill these fixtures with their under 21. So players are getting professional contracts at 18. Then they're in this under 21 situation and with no chance of getting to the first team. Now, of course, the club doesn't tell them that. We know that in the first 5 years of a professional footballer's career, between the ages of 18 and 23, across the 300 players, 5 moves in 5 years. 5. So players who get a pro at Tottenham, let's use Tottenham as an example. I've got a pro at Tottenham. Right, you need to start thinking about getting some loan moves and going showing the world that you're good enough. Because if you stay at Tottenham, this isn't going to happen for you. In their under 21s, like, you need to either be at the Tottenham first team, Archie Gray, or you need to be out on loan showing the world that you can play men's football. And that's that. And so you need to prepare for 5 moves. Otherwise, players will just sit in the under 21s thinking, this is great, I'm getting $4,000 a week. And then, as I've said before, nothing comes of it because they haven't gone and played men's football. Harry Kane, he went on loan here, he went on loan there. Yeah, he did. He went to Norwich. He was out making mistakes, developing himself because, well, first of all, Arsenal, they let him go. And then Tottenham didn't think he was ready. So that is how you then start to build a career.
I was going to say, forget the footballing piece of this for a second, right? If you're 18 and you're about to be on a journey of playing for 5 different professional clubs to try to get to wherever you're trying to get to, just the mental challenge of doing that, especially if you're coming from a top professional academy. I don't know if you have the numbers around it, but the percentages of kids who end up playing on the first team, whether it's in England or one of the top 5 countries, is probably very small at that stage.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. There's another element of this, which is the late developers. And this has become a real annoyance for me, that coaches are, this isn't their fault. Coaches are asked to make decisions about players when they're 18 or when they're 16, or to an extent when they're 20. And what we're asking coaches to do is to predict the future. We're saying, how do you think that kid's going to turn out? He's 16 now. What do you think he's going to be like when he's 21? it's 5 years of development, and you might not, there's so much more maturation to be done at that phase. So for me, the getting out on loan, and if I was in charge of a football club, if somebody was just being asked to go onto a working group at a Premier League club, and one of the things I'm going to say is, how strategically do we keep players in our system, be it out on loan, to give them a chance to be a late developer? Because making a call at 18 means you've either got to be a superstar and ready for first team football at 18, or we're going to let you go. So you're right, the chances of getting into a first team at 18 are tricky. The hardest part, I think, for the young players and their families is to understand risk and vulnerability. But if you look at the top players, they are the ones who are willing to risk, to be a bit vulnerable, to put themselves out there, to make mistakes, to learn from those mistakes, to go again. And that's where the psychology of it comes in. And this is where the family needs to be such a tight unit so that they can support them through those vulnerable times and talk to them about vulnerability and fear and risk as well.
So if you have two players, young players that you're coaching, or families that you're coaching, and they're similarly talented, they've gone through the same path, what's kind of sliding door moments that you can see that will define a kid that having a chance progressing and one that would have a hindrance?
I would say their willingness, their obsession with going to get a contract somewhere. So for example, if I was working with let's say we had two players and one said, I will go anywhere in Europe, get eyes on me, get me a professional contract and get eyes on me so that I can show the world that I am too good for this level, I would be saying, okay, brilliant. You are in a very good space here mentally to attack this. If I had another one who was going, no, I want to play in England, I would be encouraging them through the data to say, but you are really restricting your opportunities to go and get men's football. So you have to have a mentality, which means I am going to go and get this. And then if you're working with me and you come with that mentality and I go, right, well, I will show you how you go and get this. And this is how we do it. We cast our net wide. We think global. We find the clubs that need somebody in your position. We find countries that fit your style. So I'm quite a small player. Okay. So we're not going to go to Scotland, or we're going to go to Portugal or look at Spain or something like that. We know that Norway, Sweden perhaps have got a different mentality about youth development, more of a chance there. Life is the story of 1,000 pitches, maybe 10,000 pitches. Just keep pitching yourself. And when you're sitting under 21s football, you aren't pitching yourself because everybody inside the game goes, yeah, it's not real football. Like, there's nobody on this pitch where the mortgage is on the line here, whether they win or lose. And the good thing about the UK and other countries in Europe, we've got depth to the leagues where you can go and be paid to play football with some atmosphere, with fans who really care about whether you win or not, and then you're under pressure. That would be the sliding door moment for me, where I'm going, actually getting a contract at 18, not particularly that difficult. The next bit, the 18 to 23 is a huge turning point for so many players, where I think sometimes you think, oh, Sam, I've made it. I've got my contract at 18. Actually, I'm afraid now the hard work really starts, because you've got to go and you've got to perform where people are giving you money to perform. And that is a very different relationship all of a sudden.
So Chris, you have MLS is our top league here, and then it's USL Championship,
Yep.
and then you have USL League One and MLS Next Pro. And MLS Next Pro, from what we've heard, feels very much like a U21 environment, where it's become an extension of their youth academy. And while most of these kids are on professional contracts of some sort, it's very different than USL Championship, where everyone is a professional and they've got to win and pay bills. And maybe the technical level isn't as high, right? Or maybe this isn't as good, but that feeling of you are playing for a paycheck that you need to get to the next week, you can't create that environment in a U21 situation.
But Matt, what you said is so sharp, because if we had to, you and I, do an internal survey of families we know or kids we know, I don't know, I think most would end in saying, what is the I made it? To be like, great, I want to get to that MLS Pro 2 contract. That's why our interview with the USL was so eye-opening. I think people don't think of the bigger picture and what really happens after that first pro contract. And we had Alex Rondo here, who got caught in that limbo of that first pro contract and then was basically in an extended academy from 21 to 24, and said he was playing in front of 50 people without all of a sudden any hope. I think it's something we just don't immediately think about.
I mean, we're all guilty of this, aren't we? In football clubs, I went to watch a U21 game. I'm talking to the mums of some of the players. I said, what is happening next? I don't know. We're just going to wait and see, and then take it from there. And I'm thinking, you need to be thinking about this now, because you could actually be a step ahead of everybody. You could already be contacting clubs. There's so much work, so much groundwork to be done. We can make mistakes, and the world isn't watching. Some people are watching, but the world isn't watching. We're not like Premier League here, where one bad game and then that's it. Here things can go wrong, and we can learn from them, and we can get better, because we're only 20 and we've got 4 or 5 years development left. Yeah, that to me is such a really good example, and it sounds like you've got the same situation there. You can sit in that comfort zone because you're just looking at the next contract. Oh, yes, we've got another year. Brilliant. All right, well, what are you doing with that year? How are we going to use that year to get to the next place? What's the next place after that? We can't just hope.
We get so attached to a brand. We have our kids, we're all invested in it, and in a way you want them to be part of that brand. It sounds to me a very difficult job for you to try to convince a family that there's another path.
Chris, from the stories that we hear, the U16, 17, 18 players even sign homegrown contracts, as they call them here. You have a contract, but you lose a lot of power, a lot of flexibility to control your own destiny to a certain degree. Sport is a business, and we all understand that, and that's part of the deal. The situation you were describing sounds great, but is it realistic? I mean, if you're a U21 player at Tottenham, for example, is the club really going to listen to you? And are you actually empowered? Do you have any leverage in a situation like that to get yourself out on loan into a place that you think is a good fit for you, as opposed to just for the club?
It depends how good you are. It depends what they see. It depends the personnel, the club. It depends on your negotiating skills, on the negotiating skills of your agent. It depends on the data that you've got to hand. All those things in a mix. And you're right, it's leverage, it's power. So if you feel, so let me give you an example. I chatted with a mom of a player who was being courted by 3 or 4 teams. He'd been offered a scholarship and 3 years professional contract off straight away when he's still only 15. So this club think he's good. Other Premier League clubs are interested. She'd been approached by so many agents. And I said, right, now is your point where you can actually go forward and try and get something like this written down and get it somewhere in this contract. I'm not saying that all the time you're going to get them saying, yes, absolutely, no problem. Because I've had conversations where clubs have blocked it. Clubs have taken the legal route and no, you signed this, you can't, we're in control. And that is a problem. That absolutely is a problem. But this is why you need to start thinking about this when you're 14, 15, 16 with your parents, so that you don't go signing something or having a chat and an open and honest conversation with the club about this as a possibility.
But for us, as we're looking at the younger kids, okay, does this mentality or attitude that you just brought up, would that also be applicable to the younger ages, where you said, okay, there's mobility within the academy club system in the UK as well?
That can occur in both ways. You've got a young player who is working hard, think things are going well, and then the club say, no, we're not keeping you for the under 15s and under 16s. And then you've got to go on trial again. This is the reality of elite sport, not just football. You know, elite sport.
Yeah.
It's there. It's all there. It's cutthroat. And these are all businesses. And they're basically they see you as an asset. We've learnt that now. You might only be 14, but let's have a talk about it. And do you want to go again? Yeah, I do. Right, let's go. Let's go again then. This is what trials are going to be like. Here's how we prepare you for trials. Here's how we get your name out there again. And we go again.
Chris, from the data, qualitatively, quantitatively, whatever it may be, what did it tell you about the environments that the kids were in when they were 12, 13, 14 years old? What were you looking for? What were you asking about, I guess? And was there anything telling coming out of those, coming out of the specific environments? And when I say environments, I mean both the club environment, the home environment, anything socioeconomic that may have had an impact in studying
Your question
the
about
results.
socioeconomics is a really interesting one, because there has been other research that's tried to maybe highlight how much money is needed to be invested. The need for one parent at least to have some sort of flexible job where they can drop things and get the kid to training or matches. The money that's needed for petrol and the time to get around the country is an interesting dynamic. My observations and discussions that I've had around the sort of 12 to 13, 14, I still believe we are largely driven by adult-led outcomes at that space. It's like, who do we think's good enough to get a scholarship? When we still probably should be in the phase of developmental stuff. We don't know who's read through puberty, etc., all those things. There's so much more to come. We don't know who are the late developers. They've still got a lot of catching up to do. So we still, for me, should be in a very developmental phase. We should be focusing a bit more on bio-banding. And when you go to academies, largely, you find very narrow outcomes around who is the best. No, they're looking good. We're not really in a space of what are these kids likely to be like few years' time. And that is the skill in an academy.
Chris, can I get into a little bit more about the late developers? I think you gave the age range of like 18 to 23, if I'm not mistaken, or even a little bit older. And then the percentage of those late developers who are actually playing first team football, and in all likelihood in different first team football than where they grew up from an academy perspective, right? If the data tracks. Given that, why do we still seemingly, and this seems to be a global issue, not just a UK issue, underinvest in the process of in helping ensure that late developers continue to have a clear pathway? Because it seems like you've invested all this money in a player, right? And then you kind of give up, and clubs, again, globally, give up on a kid at 18 or 19 years old if they're not in the first team. Why not have more extensive programs? Or have you heard of clubs who are putting in more extensive programs to focus on those late developers?
I've not heard of anybody who's done that. Why we give up on this? I don't know if it's because people just think it's such a difficult thing to get round. But I've always come from the point of view of it's the difficult questions that we need to answer to get the most returns. If we just ignore the difficult things in life, then we give up on so much. And it staggers me. Chelsea, for example, have identified a young coach early on in his coaching career, have backed him all the way through his coaching, brought him into the organisation, then given him the keys to Chelsea, sacked him a few months later, and now he's gone into the category of he's never going to be good enough, so we're just going to get rid of him from the whole organisation. It's staggering. It's staggering short-termism. And the same occurs, I think, with young players. We invest in them from 8, and then at 18 or 19 go, it's not going to make it. Instead of, what if they've still got development in them? A range of metrics that we can take, giving them an opportunity still within our organization, but through the loan system to go and develop further. They then, for me, then become an asset. Even if you then think they're still not quite the standard of our first team, but now they're going to be worth more. And I fail to see that that is too difficult to overcome. I really do. I believe that a club who takes that step and starts thinking in that way actually will steal a march on the sector and start to, in the way that Brighton and Brentford have done in other areas, But the reality is also, as soon as those players leave, the club moves on. The machine rolls onto the next group of players in a brutal way. That's actually the reality. So what you probably get are two processes occurring at the same time. A group of people in the club trying to stay in touch with the players and see if they're all right. And the rest have started coaching the next group, right? So eyes on to the next year. If there anybody else to come through. And that's where I still think we get families and players feeding back going, yeah, not enough's done. I've suddenly started feeling like I was just a piece of meat and then I was nothing anymore. And off I went. And I've been here since I was 8. And that's that's always going to be a hard thing to manage.
But even your language, if they're all right, right? Essentially, like a leading indicator that there's been something traumatic has happened. And most of these kids, if they've been at a professional academy since they were 8 years old, I mean, it is a large portion of their identity. And if you're cut at 18, it's very different than even playing at U21, right? Because you're still hanging around the goal at U21, have a chance to go out on loan. At 18, if you're released, and then you're fending for yourself. And that may be trying to get into another professional academy. It may be playing semi-professionally. It may be becoming a tradesman. Like, who knows, right? But either way, it's probably...
This is all plan A. It really frustrates me when people say, oh, you need a plan B. It's all plan A. You have to be developing not different versions of yourself, but varied interests. And that's okay. The reason that plan B frustrates me is because they'll say, it sounds like a separate idea, as if you're going to go off in a different direction. There are numerous players who've gone on and got degrees while being professional players and have gone on to win a World Cup. Like, this education versus playing dichotomy doesn't exist. It can be the same thing. I spoke to a professional player who said, if I'd not done a degree, I'd have gone mad. Because when things weren't going well on the pitch, or it kept me grounded, it meant I had to go and concentrate on something else for a bit. It got me away from the club and just some space with different people for a bit. And the same could be said of doing a trade. And I think of education in a real holistic sense, learning a different language. It's almost a no-brainer if you want to be a professional footballer to have more than one language. There are so many different ways you can talk about education in modern society because of courses that you can do in something that really interests you. This is just you. It's not plan A and plan B. This is just you.
I just want to move a little bit to the United States. Do you find that the U.S. has become an interesting destination for some of your players?
Yeah, I think it's definitely become more of a conversation with expansion. And number one, the college route. And I know there are conversations going on about the number of games that they play in college and how that might change, because it's definitely something that I've advised players about. Be aware that you're not going to get loads and loads of games.
Yeah, very short season.
And that's can sometimes take them by surprise. We're actually just...
we don't understand.
I'm involved in a company. We want to do some career coaching specifically for that. I see a lot of companies who, I want to say exploit, but they know that there are kids over here who want to go to America. They get that deal done and then don't get in touch with them ever again, and they're just in America. And
are you talking about college or professional play?
College in that space. That's where we want to start. But again, two things that I think have started to occur is more people in this country are seeing the professional game in America as a legitimate, standard. And also that there are enough eyes there that as a young player to go there and play men's football, I could be seen and be brought back. I think that has started to occur. And I've definitely had those conversations with people. I can only really see that probably developing a bit more. Once you start, there's a reason that agents have started to gravitate around there. And that says to me that there's business to be done there. If we're talking about asset development, which it's not a nice word, but essentially that is what you're doing with a young player. Can we get them so somebody sees them and thinks they're an asset, either on the pitch or we can sell on? If agents are heading that way, that probably tells you that there are assets over in that area of the world to be taken over.
But I think when there's enough smoke, there's probably there's fire, and it sounds like there's a ton of conversation at the right levels, and you always need money for these things to happen. I think there's starting to be enough money around it where it could be realistic.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's going to come down to the finances of it, isn't it?
We will tell you that the colleges, especially the D1, what we consider the top leagues, are flooded by international players right now.
Yeah, and I guess that is a problem for US.
It's not a problem.
Okay.
It's not, it is a significant problem for incoming freshmen.
Yeah.
So 18-year-olds, even playing at the top
Yeah.
academies here, it's become that much more difficult for them to get a spot, let alone a scholarship. And that has an effect on Division II soccer, Division III soccer. This is at the collegiate level, which is all very significant. I think it's increasing the quality across the board, which is great. But it is limiting some opportunities, especially for the younger kids.
But we've had in the UK an increase in the number of private academies. So they're not attached to a football club, but they are private academies and they attach to universities. A player from the US could come to the UK for a private academy, align that with their education. The key for that private academy is getting them the games at the level that would be sort of expected. They're probably going to get a decent number of games versus the US. And then they get them as many games as they can and they try and push them to the highest level that they possibly can in those games with the idea of getting eyes on them, etc., etc. They've had some good results. And they've definitely had players from the US because I've met them.
And they're paying to be there though, correct?
Yeah.
The players? Yeah. So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of, or quite a few organizations out there where American kids have the opportunities to go play and study abroad. I think that some of them, we know some of them do a wonderful job. There's others that probably do less wonderful of a job. Laurent put me in on a term a few years back called selection to pay. And I think there's always that question, right? Which is, how good is my son or daughter versus am I willing and able to pay to have the opportunity?
It helps how good they are if you're willing to pay.
It doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Another clue from Laurent.
And that is actually something that I think for parents to be really aware of. There comes an age where if you're still paying to play, come on, it's a red flag. It's a red flag that they have not developed, and they aren't. Either you need to go somewhere else and get some separate assessment. So one of the things that I do when I'm working with players is get a scouting report done that's independent, because it cuts out the BS. It cuts out the politics. They're telling you this because they think this. So no. Let's go independent. Somebody who doesn't even know you, and they write a scouting report on you, and then we know. And actually, they're not that expensive. You could get a scouting report done for not that much money if you've got the video, and it's not a bad thing to do, to be honest. And if you're paying to get your kid into academies at a later, more advanced age, it's probably a red flag.
Well, remember, there's only 30 free academies in the professional academies in the US, and everything else you're paying. So it doesn't correlate exactly, but there is still something to that, because there's only so many kids who are going to quote unquote make it, however we're defining it, or get a scholarship to college. And I'm sure that a decent amount of that tracks to the professional clubs where kids are not paying.
I'll give you an example of a situation that occurred of a parent I know. So they were in Australia. They went on holiday to Serbia because the wife in the couple's from Serbia. So they spent the summer there. And they went to a holiday camp, essentially, run by Red Star Belgrade. And the coaches said, "Who's this kid?" "Oh, we're just here on holiday. He's good. And he's got a passport for, he's got a passport for here. Would he stay?" Anyway, the child said, yeah, I'll stay. So the family went back to Australia. The child stayed at the academy in Serbia. About 4 weeks later, I think it was, the dad said, "I can't do this." So they moved the whole family out to Serbia. And that's when I go, that's a bit of a mentality around somebody who will go, "I want to do this. I just want to do this." Because that's now got eyes on him in Europe. He's just actually gone on loan and played his first bit of men's football at a lower division in Serbia. And you think about the conversation we're having there from somebody else who says, actually, we're going to stay in the US and just pay to stay at an academy rather than all right, that's slightly different because they've got a dual passport. But that to me is somebody who's gone, the kid really, really wants to do this. And deep down, the kid's gone, I want to do this. I'm up for risking. I'm up for leaving Australia and living in Serbia and having a go at this. And the dad's gone, cool. But by the way, he's on for a great grade point average as well. He's not let his education drop. Because I've had conversations with him and his dad's gone, you don't slump off this. This is both of these have got to be top.
I can see all the American parents now changing their vacation plans.
Serbia, sure. The Balkans are waiting. The Balkans are waiting, everyone.
Tourism is going to have a huge spike in Serbia this summer. Laurent, do you want to wrap with some rapid fire?
I have a few prepared. Do you judge kids by their talents to get into your program?
No.
Earlier academy always means better odds.
No.
Give me one or two things that a parent should do to say, okay, we're all in, we're going to support.
Educate themselves. Read, educate themselves before they go all in.
Well, I didn't do that, so that's too late for me. So
A bigger badge usually means a better environment.
Not necessarily. No.
well, you got that answer then. I think yes.
What, really? I was like, what?
Question again, because I'm a bit of a stickler for words. I think that I'll explain why I said what I did. So you have to, again, as a parent, and have these conversations. What is the best environment for your child? Because being a small fish in a big pond isn't great for everybody. And the cutthroat nature of some of those clubs can be detrimental. And I have come across kids who have really, really suffered at the big clubs, dropped down and been far better as a player. Far better, you know. In fact, a dad messaged me the other day with a clip of his kid having a shot from a halfway line and taking a penalty in a penalty shootout. And he said he never would have done this at X club. He just wasn't mentally going, I'll have a shot from the halfway line. In fact, and he missed a penalty in a shootout, got berated so badly by the coach that he never wanted to take a penalty again. And he's dropped to what would be seen as a smaller club. So as a parent, which one, how's he going to be a better player? Stay at that club? Or go and build that club. So I think it's, you know, you can't say yes or no to that as a question, but that was my thinking behind saying not necessarily, because it's not always a better environment at a bigger club. Not always, not for everyone.
Is it fair to ask parents to actually know what is the best environment for their kids?
Yes, I actually think it's a responsibility. Yeah, and you can't shirk that responsibility, I'm afraid, because if being a parent's a responsibility, isn't it? And if you're then saying, I am taking my child to this business from the age of 6 to 8, then I think you do have a responsibility to step away from the romantic view and think we need to start thinking about this as a business situation, because the clubs are. The clubs are thinking about this as a business transaction, and the way you get caught out as a parent, and it isn't their fault, but the way you get caught out as a parent is if you think, oh, it's lovely, you know, oh, it's great, we're going to get him into football, we've supported him actually, you know, my granddad had a season ticket there, and you get caught in the romanticism of it all, and then bang, oh no, this isn't like this at all. And for the past 10 years, we've not been educating ourselves, and then you're in trouble. So I think you have to take that responsibility on.
That sums up everything, right, Matt?
It does. So given different environments and how subjective player evaluation and selection is, how much do connections actually matter? And is it more than we want to admit? It's the agent, it's the former player who has a relationship with the family, whatever it may be.
Yeah, they matter. They definitely matter. We don't like to admit it, but we all take biases through life. I mean, this starts to explain to me why we don't have as many late developers in academy systems. It's because there are biases in our judgment, and we look for the bias. So if we don't think he's not going to be good enough to make it, or the opposite, he's the son of a former player, so he should be good, we then look for all the times that he is good, and we add our value judgments to that. So absolutely, you need to be making connections within the game for a multitude of different reasons, to get honest feedback, to have different clubs give you advice. And again, it's something I do with parents of young players. How are you building up connections? What are you doing on LinkedIn that's going to help you gain some connections in this world where you're going to get some advice from different people? Again, it could be that you end up pitching your son or daughter to somebody via LinkedIn and scouts, etc. You got to do that. Those things are really, really important. Really, really important. I don't believe that judgments on players are as objective as people think they are. They're incredibly subjective. We know, for example, the number one predictor of success in elite sport is attitude over talent. It doesn't mean you can't have any talent. You've got to have some talent, but attitude is the predictor. You go and ask coaches or scouts what attitude is and how they measure it, and the majority will not be able to do it. That doesn't mean if you're a rubbish footballer, if you've just got a great attitude, you're going to get there. That's not what it's saying. But it does mean that a predictor of who's going to be a great player when they're like 24, 25 is linked to their attitude. In my PhD study, I interviewed coaches at clubs and said, what's a good attitude? And I had loads of different responses to that. There isn't a defined attitude what is it you're actually looking for? And then what's even worse for me is scouts will watch a game and try and make a value judgment on an attitude based on watching a game. They don't talk to them. And I find that quite baffling. I'd be interviewing the parents. I'd be interviewing the kid. I'd be wanting to chat to them, going, what are you like as a person? What's the habitus? What's the identity of this young player? Are there clues here that they're going to have a good attitude or a bad attitude? They're really, really important. And I think we underplay those. So that's crucial for me in understanding. And again, you will have an idea of what your kid's attitude is like how much are they a hard worker? How dedicated are they? That will give you some good indications of their ability to sort of sustain the level of work that's needed to become an elite, professional player, an elite level player. Absolutely.
Oh, amazing. You've given us so much. How do our listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah. So I'm on social media. I've got a website, which is chrisplatts.co.uk. I publish a newsletter on there that you can sign up for, a blog every other week where I take these bits of research and put them into smaller digestible things for people to read. I do run some free workshops, 1 or 2 a month. If people want to jump on, it just gives another chance for people I'll usually pick a topic. It allows people to hear a little bit more about me, tune into some of the services that I offer. And if it's right for them at that point in time, you can book a call with me and we just sit 1-to-1 and have a good chat about your pain points and see whether I can help or not. So that's probably the best way of getting in touch with me. Jump onto the website and take it from there. If anybody's off the back of this wants to ask any questions, info@chrisplatts.co.uk is also my email. So you could, fire out a question. Don't ever think you're on your own on this journey. There are people who are there to help and advise and chat with you. So if you've got a question, get it answered. Don't just wonder. The answer will be out there.
Dr. Chris Platts, thank you so much for joining us on Chasing the Game. What an informative conversation, and we can't wait to get this out to the audience.
Absolutely brilliant work, Doctor. Thank you so much. I don't know how to say wow with a Sheffield accent, but Matt, I'm going to leave this one to you.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that either. There are a few lines from Chris that really frame this episode. Getting a professional contract at 18 doesn't mean you get a career. It means you've got a first contract. That changes the way families should think about the whole chase.
So much of youth soccer, for us at least, is built around the next proof point, right? Is it the academy, the badge, the scholarship, in this case, the contract? But what I realized that it's not a finish line, right? It's just another decision point.
And then there's the question he tells families to ask. Why are you playing football? And what is it you are trying to achieve?
Yeah, and the hard part, for me at least, that is a parent and the player, my son, we probably don't have the same answer. At least I don't know. I've never asked him, and the system just keeps moving and churning and moving forward.
And one more line that matters. You have to be the anchor.
Yeah, you don't need to control everything as a parent, and it's hard, but you need to understand the environment, you need to ask better questions, and to know when the path is actually helping your kid. Huge, massive thanks to Dr. Chris Platts for bringing this research and honesty and clarity into this conversation.
And just like your kids, a pro contract at 18 doesn't mean the work is done.
Yeah, the same goes here. So your work, listener, is not done. If this episode made you think, share it with another parent and subscribe. Come on. This is Chasing the Game Youth Soccer in America. Next time, Matt.
Next time, Laurent.